Okay, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and get things kicked off. Thank you all so much for joining. We have a super special guest today for our AMA. We have Andrea Kayal, who is the CRO of Help Scout, which is a leading provider of shared inbox, help center, and live chat software to give teams the tools they need to easily manage customer communications. She was previously the CRO at Teampay, CMO of companies like Electric Upserve, Signpost. She's a board member and advisor to numerous companies. She also serves as the current Dean of CMO School run by Pavilion. Andrea is really a powerhouse in both the marketing and sales world. So I'm really excited to ask her all about building a revenue team and how she's thinking about leveraging AI for her team's workflows. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Please feel free to type in any questions you have for Andrea that you didn't submit already into the chat if anything comes up. And this should be a great conversation. So welcome, Andrea.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to kick it off by actually asking a question that's come up recently a few times for me. I've seen a few folks who have transitioned from the CMO role into CRO. And it's funny because I'm starting to see a recurring pattern. So I'm just curious about your path and kind of how you made that transition over.
Well, I'm happy to see that it's a reoccurring path or something that's a little bit less rare, because I've often wondered, like, why are all my sales peers getting the CRO role when, in reality, I think that job is really just a mix of putting sales and marketing together. I'm like, marketing is just as important as sales. So a few things. I am a very left brain marketer. And so, very process driven, very data driven, have always made sure that I was aligned, with my sales leader on things like, well, let's just be very clear on the definition of where the handshake is, usually the SQL, if marketing believes it's pipeline to sales, can we get that really well documented and things like this. So I always felt like I tended to over rotate to the sales side with my marketing hat on, mostly because I wanted to make sure that we were objectively measuring marketing in the same way that sales gets measured. And so I found that the transition into CRO felt a little bit more natural to me than I thought it was going to initially. But really what it comes down to is, are you good at hiring the right people? Do you have a process driven sort of mindset where you're good at kind of putting the puzzle pieces together, and then are you really good at hiring? So if you feel like you're both of those things, then no matter your role, whether it's sales or marketing, taking a step up is easy enough to do. And then frankly, I just hire a great sales leader to make sure that I'm solving for the gap that really wasn't truly my background. So hiring it definitely helps kind of bridge the gap on anything you might be missing.
That makes sense. And I feel like that's kind of a core attribute to any C-level executive. When you look at the KPIs, especially at the executive level, are they wildly different from a marketing, like a CMO over CRO perspective, or are they actually quite common?
No, they're different. I'm reporting on, well, it depends on how much of the revenue you own inside of the organization. There's new MRR or ARR, there's net expansion, which could be the kind of how much your customers are growing or shrinking inside of the customer base. And growing could be on the account management side. Shrinking could be on the CS side. So it just depends on who owns what. So right now at Help Scout, my teams are responsible for new MRR. So not necessarily the contraction that's happening, because some of that is market volatility, but certainly how much we're upselling into our customer base. And then on the sales side, the AE side, it's truly all new ARR. At Teampay, I oversaw all of it, and that included contraction and churn. Churn is managed by a different team at Help Scout. So it kind of depends. Your KPIs depend on what your scope of work is. My scope, Help Scout is a much larger company than Teampay by 3 times. So my scope is appropriately placed, I think, here, because we have a lot of growing we need to do on the new MRR side. And in that case, my KPIs are specific to both how much new did we add every single month. We're a transactional business. ACVs are pretty low, about $1,200. So we're seeing how many basically deals we can crank through in a month. And then on the AM side, it's really did we renew the customer, and are we able to kind of grow the contract value? So the marketing KPIs are all feeding into that, but at the highest level, CEO cares about those two things.
And who is it, customer success, that owns churn and contraction, or who owns that piece?
Correct. We call it C team, but yeah. And I love the CEO's philosophy on this, because product truly should be the thing that's keeping the customer. While AM and CS are very important parts of that journey. If customers are really like leaving at a sort of untenable rate, there's a product problem. It's not like a people problem. So with that being handled in C team and support, it reports directly into the CEO. So there's a head of customers basically that reports into him. And that's where all the churn is basically like being recorded and watched.
Has the current market dynamic shifted the prioritization from a top level down? Meaning, I've heard a lot of other companies are shifting a lot more emphasis on net dollar retention than typical before, as opposed to net new revenue. Has that affected how you guys think about your—
Every company? Yeah, the companies I advise, every Pavilion member I talk to, every data point I see is all about NDR. But I'd say first that, to be clear, the KPI everybody needs to be focused on is gross dollar, because NDR obfuscates churn, and churn is usually the issue. And when customer is churning, you cannot get the money back, and you cannot sell any more sell into the customer base. So NDR, certainly, because you want to make sure there's a motion to make more from your customer base. But like, if you don't have the GDR or NDR, however you refer to it in your business, like under control, it's a problem.
Yeah, makes sense. One other thing I wanted to ask you about, having sat on both the marketing and the sales side, that's somewhat controversial, is, in your opinion, where should SDRs sit?
I think it's a marketing touch point. Like, it's outreach. It's like we're pushing some information about who we are at somebody who is not in an active buying cycle, perhaps. That's trying to capture latent demand. And that's what marketers do. We try to capture the active demand. So we like do all the things around that, whether that's paid search or like, trying to show up if on intent with 6 Sense and things like this. And then there's also like advertising and like LinkedIn messaging and stuff like this. Like, maybe somebody's not ready to buy. You push the message out there. And like, that's what SDRs are doing. They're calling or they're emailing. It's a touch point as part of the marketing journey. So I think it definitely belongs in marketing. I will caveat that and say, for larger ACV deals that have longer sales cycles, where the SDR and the AE are working sort of in tandem, and maybe it feels more like salesy because they're like working deals for a very long period of time, inviting them to events and stuff like this. I think maybe there's something to say about that, but I think on the more transactional side, it's a marketing touch point and belongs there.
I am 1000% aligned with everything you said.
Okay.
It's how I think about it is anything top of funnel, which in my opinion, most SDR, to your point, very complex, long sales cycle enterprise deals, different. But everything else, SDR's work is top of funnel, whether it's inbound or outbound.
Right.
And up until opportunity generation, that's when the baton gets handed to sales. And
1000%.
they're sitting aligned with all the activities in marketing. So
and frankly, like, the goals that SDR has is not unlike the goals that marketing has. It's like, we're going to get it to the point of the handshake where the AE agrees this is workable. I have the right person on the phone, and like they have budget and timing or whatever. So, what
I do find fascinating, though, is even when they are sitting as a part of essentially the marketing org, the compensation structure still is a sales compensation structure, whereas marketing never has variable comp. And I think that, in my opinion, leads to some misaligned incentives, or at least the actions will align 100% with where you set the incentives. And so making sure you figure those out is pretty critical.
It's so critical. I would say, though, that the career path for an SDR is usually to sales. And so like, I respect that deeply and want to make sure that like any SDR is, on the path of the next job, that they want. But their variable compensation is unlike what marketing is being compensated on. So you're right. There are definitely like times where there's a lot of like conflict there, but I'd be curious about your opinion on this. Like, do you variably comp marketers or not?
I've never seen it done, but one thing that I actually would love to see a company try is at a bare minimum. So it's also fascinating. In my mind, I've kind of bucketed, especially the CMOs who shift to more of a CRO role, tend to be much more data driven. And there's, two flavors of marketers. You have the people who anchor more on brand and content,
Yeah.
and then you have the people who anchor more on demand gen, growth, revenue numbers. And I think it would be very fascinating to at least take anybody who falls under demand gen or growth and have variable comp and see what that can produce. So
yeah, there was a time at Electric, well, actually it was at Upserve where the growth team was variably comped. But I struggle with that a little bit, mostly because I don't know if I maybe just struggle with variable comp generally. It's like, if you're not doing the job, you probably won't have the job for much longer. So do you actually need the variable comp to do different work? Like, would you do different things if you knew you were going to get more money from it? Then just do it. You know what I mean? Like, there's something about that like I can't reconcile in my mind. You know what I mean?
yes, but I'm sure you've seen this experience over and over again, specifically with SDRs. I'll give you an example. If you are paying SDRs based off of meetings booked, you will have a huge volume of meetings. That doesn't mean good meetings. If you benchmark them or essentially comp them on sales accepted post meeting, now all of a sudden the volume of meetings goes down, but the quality goes up.
Totally.
So it's just one of those things where they know what they're supposed to be doing. They know the company goals, but that's not how they're getting paid.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's always room to like game the system.
Exactly. One more question on this topic, and then I kind of want to move on, but how have you found in your career to best align marketing and sales? Because there's always going to be friction.
Yeah, I think it's certainly on the handshake for the goal that's the closest to getting to the revenue. And so we always have an SLA that's very clear about what it means to accept something in your pipeline when you shouldn't. And then the qualification criteria. So David Weiner and I, who is the chief sales officer, had a sales at Electric, and I was CMO. We actually weekly just checked in on that and got feedback from the teams on whether or not it was too harsh on the marketing side. Like, we weren't accepting anything because they didn't want to be gold on win rate versus the sales team, or versus us wanting them to accept too much. And so we just frequently checked in on it just to make sure. And we use data all the time to say you're accepting 1% of these through, and we'd listen to calls and stuff like that. So we just were to remove friction. We used a lot of the data, and we frequently met on it more collaboratively than I'm doing what I said I'm going to do and you're not. It wasn't a finger pointing exercise. We just talked through the problems because, we both really wanted to see Electric grow. So there was just a lot of compromise that happened between us.
And I think, kind of based off what you just said, I've seen that the best functioning marketing and sales teams are when marketing aligns itself on revenue goals too. Everyone's speaking the same language at that point.
100%. Yeah, revenue. That was it.
Well, at Electric, you saw hypergrowth, as you have through multiple stints in your career, going from 8 million to over 70 million ARR. What are some of the things that you guys did exceptionally well to kind of navigate that hypergrowth?
Yeah. Foresight was certainly the key to that, which is what do the teams need to look like in 6 months in order to support the growth that we were expecting every, quarter. So we did a lot of planning around that. We just we made sure to get the hiring in advance of that. For example, on David's team, there was a 4-month ramp time. So we were hiring 4 months in advance of how many AEs we needed to have based on the capacity at the time for the demand we were going to generate. Also a lot of foresight on the marketing side, because the demand gen tactics you need to run in order to produce the amount of pipeline you need. What I call time adjusting. You have to factor in the sales cycle for that. So if it's a 3-month sales cycle and you need to double it, you need to be 3 months in advance of that deal closing, doubling your spend at that time. So just, getting in front of the planning, I think what is a key, right now for Help Scout. If you could see my screen over here, it's bridging for 2024. It's how are we going to get from the growth rate we have today to where we want to be in 2024 while maintaining our sales and marketing efficiency metrics, which, as I'm sure you know, the efficiency stuff, because it's no longer growth at all cost, is a key factor to that. So like, if we can't spend any more money to do it, how are we going to double? Those are the questions we're asking ourselves now, and it's August. So, just get in front of it.
How is that changing your channel mix and strategy overall?
I'm looking at the mix right now and I'm like, how are we going to do it? I don't know. So I don't know. There's a lot of like beating my head against the wall right now. Cause I'm like, this is like where the rubber meets the road in terms of like how to scale. So the one thing I will say is that like, there's a lot that is forced on the revenue leader to like figure out how to grow. But at Help Scout, because it's PLG, there's a lot we're going to be putting back on the product team to solve for this. Right? I can tell you how the channel mix should basically like reapportion itself for next year based on like productive channels. But what I need help with are the growth levers. So if I'm forecasting based on an ACV of like, let's just say $1,000, what can product do, or pricing and packaging, or like acquisitions help us do in order to take the ACV from 1,000 to 2,000? So anyway, that's kind of like, those are how the conversations are going to be.
Interesting.
Like,
yeah. So it's kind of like, how can we both eke out more from anybody who's coming through the product funnel, but also probably, I always talk about like the ideal is a parallel funnel, right? Everyone who comes in goes all the way through. And obviously it doesn't look like that, but in a time like this, it feels like everyone's trying to figure out how to make the funnel more and more parallel. So whether it's, the leads that are coming inbound are going to be more likely to activate within the product, and then the product.
Exactly. That's TTP. That's exactly the metric I have, like what TTP lift, we need it. Yeah. Trial to paid. What are we doing inside the product where you're going to help me there? Like, I don't have any more money to grow. I'm reallocating how we grow, but like, that's it. It's a fixed dollar amount. So like, where are we getting productivity inside the product to do it? So, but I don't know how right now. I'm sweating looking at the slide.
What are your current channels that are your best performing channels on the demand gen side?
Help Scout is 100%, 96% by the end of the year be organic.
That's
so
amazing.
Unbelievable. Great organic demand engine, but in part why the growth rate has not been, because you can't scale that faster. It's sort of like you're based on Google's like, you're at Google's mercy when they like rank your pages and stuff like this. So we can add in probably like 4 more channels that I'm thinking of. There could be things like reselling, so like distribution channels. We have integration partners that we don't do a whole lot with right now. There could be products we could acquire. There's ways of doing that. Again, which is like a rebalance of the current marketing dollars we have, but certainly product needs to kind of like start stepping up to bear more of the burden that the revenue leaders feel. I'm not saying that like they're running away from that, but I don't think most companies are putting this on product leaders to like help in share as much of the weight of that problem with the revenue leaders. It's like product usually over here in the corner, like building whatever they want to do. And the revenue leader's like, wait, what the hell? Why is that on the roadmap? That's not going to help me with my number. Like those are the conversations. So more of the friction, I think that's going to be happening, like moving forward, is not between sales and marketing. It's between product and revenue.
That's actually a really interesting point, and such a good one, because product historically was never measured on revenue, and that was never their kind of KPIs or goals.
Well, why not? Isn't that what the product is doing?
100%.
I'm like, no. And my product leader right now, she gets it. She is like true ride or die partner on that front. So I got very lucky in joining Help Scout with somebody who believes that. But it is in the minority of product leaders to feel this way. Sorry, product leaders, but it's true.
I agree. But I also think that as more companies shift to PLG or sales assisted and product led, that they have to.
100%.
One question on the organic. So that's pretty astounding that almost 100% of your traffic right now, especially at the scale you are, is organic. Was that brand building exercises, SEO emphasis? How did you get there?
The quality of content Help Scout produces is exceptional. Wow. Truly led from a thought leadership perspective on customer support and like how to build a good business too, right? Like it was also in support of like founder CEOs who are building the business, a lot of support materials for them, like the actual person who was running a company that needed to provide great customer support. And so I think that led probably 50% or more to the success there. And then second, the CEO is very big on brand, like I said, the quality. So for me, brand is like how you look and it's what you say you do, like how you talk about yourself. It's those two things. I don't think you can decouple that from brand. I think it's like truly visual and it's truly the words you're speaking. Like how you make someone feel. Can you endear yourself to the product via those two things? Cared a lot about that from a design perspective, but he also built a lot of that like into the product. So I think he did truly make it full circle, which is like, it's not a disconnected experience between like who Help Scout is on the front and then like truly how customers feel about the product, which helped the flywheel. Because while I say 100% is organic and direct, I would say there's a large portion of that too, or like people just being like, check out Help Scout, like the word of mouth is affecting that because I think the product is really good. So
that's awesome.
Mhm.
On the content,
I had nothing to do with all of that. Like I joined 2 months ago. So
you were on the board for a while, so I'm sure you got to see the evolution of that at least.
Yeah, I watched it.
On the content front, that's actually a great transition into kind of some of the more AI stuff. So the areas that I'm finding companies right now are truly exploring, if not adopting, when it comes to generative AI tools, are primarily around two things: content, and then I would say SDR emails. And so
100%.
curious whether you guys have actually started experimenting, adopting anything, how that's going to factor into your plans.
Yeah. So on the content side, no, I know we talked about this. I think Tofu does this, right? This is like,
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So we definitely need to talk about that. But the SDR emails is definitely the first place we started with this, mostly because I think 6 months ago, there was a reduction in force related to the SDR organization because our ACV did not support the economics for an SDR organization to do outbound. So I'm working with my growth manager right now, who I have to give him like all the credit in the world because I've been more asking the questions. He's been doing the figuring out and executing, but we're really using Zoom Info to help identify who is high intent. And then we're using a mix of like 2 tools, make.com plus a Google spreadsheet plus outreach to find the contact, create the content in the spreadsheet via generative AI, ChatGPT, and then that's pushing it into an outreach email. Yep. So we basically can replicate a force of like 20 SDRs with basically one person and like 3 tools. So it's still early days and like we've a lot of tweaking to do. It gets it wrong sometimes, but certainly has driven our costs down and our productivity up related to outbound. But it can't make calls.
Exactly. And it is also still mind-blowing, like beyond mind-blowing to me, that Outreach has not launched their own generative AI product.
Is this not the craziest thing in the world?
And if they don't, I kept saying this, it is theirs to lose and they're losing it. And I know a dozen companies, including we handle SDR outreach too, but I know a dozen companies that are just focused nothing but that. They sit on top of outreach and they create hyper-personalized SDR sequences. So mind blown that they have.
Yeah, like we hacked it together. Like they need to figure it out. Like, I don't know.
Could not agree more. And you brought up something that I keep hearing over and over is you've now been able to take what was a team of 20 people and do it with essentially one. Do you think the SDR function goes away in the next few years?
No. We're, like I said, we're not able to, make calls, and it's not able to, I don't know. It's not like, I don't think we can like keep the sequences going. There's something about the personalization that I think maybe a person can do that ChatGPT just can't. Now, I say that because like I love the SDR function, so a lot of bias is seeping in here. Like technically, maybe if it gets good enough to just really figure it all out, like sure. But you know, for the SDR to reach out to me and send me a Michigan mug and say like, hey, like, you know, just saw your LinkedIn. I don't know. Like, it's not doing all that yet. So yeah, I guess if it gets really good replicating a true human and human behavior and like the warmth of a human, then it goes away. But I think we have some time before that happens.
The stuff that I'm kind of seeing now, so if you move beyond just ChatGPT, and again, not to bring in Tofu and things like that, but a lot of the companies like us, we actually create we call it a playbook, but it's bringing in your branding, tone of voice, messaging, all of that kind of stuff. So it's not just what the AI model wants to do, it's actually mimicking exactly what you've done historically. And so we can look at all historical language. And you mentioned something earlier, which I think is like so spot on, in that the reason you guys were able to generate such high quality inbound traffic is because your content was really good.
Yeah.
With AI, it is so true that the quality of the outputs is directly indicative of the quality of the inputs. And so if you're putting in something that's crap, you're going to get out crap.
Totally.
And that's where I'm seeing, I hosted a dinner with about 14 CMOs on Monday, and we had a long discussion about the SDR function. And one of the CMOs said something that really resonated with me, in that for transactional or low ACV type businesses, you can do a lot of this hyper personalization and continue to iterate better than an SDR could with a tool. For things that involve longer sales cycles or complex relationship building, you still definitely need the human. So that human needs to be the creative and the strategic, but it kind of almost goes towards marketing now to make sure that whatever you're using as a template or a base or something is really good. Because if you don't have that, it's just not going to be compelling.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
You make a great point. And like, yeah, I think the quality is the, you know, it's supposed to be the litmus test of like when it goes away, when it starts when everything is really good quality. And by the way, this is why Help Scout didn't build a bot yet for the site that interacts like on behalf of our customers, is because we were always like, that bot is usually notoriously terrible. American Airlines, like, you know, all the bots, Citibank. I'm like, can I get one thing done with the bot?
Yeah.
But now generative AI is like making this such a better customer experience. Again, assuming you have the right inputs, that we've really leaned in, because customer support is one of the industries that's very ripe for disruption on AI, because you're like responding to stuff that has been asked probably over and over again, dozens of times. So I'm very excited about, you know, what's going on with it.
And you guys probably just have a ton of data, and also sitting in any kind of, you know, help desk that, you know, you guys use internally that you can train it on. I know
100%.
I saw recently you guys have actually been making some moves on the AI front yourself. How has that been received so far by customers?
Awesome. And we just saw like some of the recent stats for people like adopting it. It's like crushed what we originally thought it was going to do. And Nick, the CEO, is like, and that's just the beginning and the basics. He's like, that's like kid AI, you know, like, I mean, it's very helpful. It's AI summarized. Like, we're summarizing whole conversations for teams, like in like click of a button. Like, for me, I'm like, holy shit, this is awesome. He's like, but just the beginning. So like, we have the vision that he has, that he's working with the CTO on right now for like all the AI stuff that's yet to come. It's so exciting. I'm like, we're truly going to be adding so much value for the people that are like, you know, trying to solve customer support questions every day, that it feels like the first time in a while where like, if software prices increase, you understand why, not just because like it's inflation or whatever. You're like, holy shit, no, actually this delivered a lot more value. So I'm excited about that. I mean, I'm excited about our ACVs going up, hopefully, but you know, the true value we're delivering, not just like we're raising it because, you know.
And it feels like this is a time when anything is possible. It's just, it feels like magic, but to your colleague's point, it feels like just the beginning.
Just the beginning too.
It's going to be really cool to see. On the content front and kind of this personalization front, a topic that's come up a lot is what happens when everything becomes personalized? Do people get completely jaded and ignorant? Do the current channels that were working stop working? Do you have any thoughts on that front?
If you truly delivered value, I think is more important than the personalization aspect of it. You would hope that the personalization is helping deliver the value, but I just think ultimately that's the bar. Like, I would if I learn something like Kyle Poyer, writes a lot about PLG, he's the open view. Every single thing he writes, I find a lot of value from. Zero of it is personalized, So it's more about what it is. I prefer like less quantity of personalized stuff over just like high quality stuff. If it's personalized too, then great. But that's so far, like that's the more inferior like level thing I care about.
Yeah. And is content still a major channel and priority for the company going forward? Is that still continuing?
Oh yeah. For Help Scout, #1 priority.
Yeah.
On the marketing side.
Any channels that you guys use that are either non-traditional or things that have been outsized in their value?
Again, today it's primarily like Google search is outsized in its value. But it's because there has been no other distribution plan until I've, been like, well, we just wrote this really awesome 60-page thing that has so much freaking information in it. And we're only like pushing it out organically. I'm like, well, what's our paid strategy? So we're going to be using more distribution channels in the future. It's just, we haven't really scratched the surface there.
That's actually, you just brought up something that I'm personally very curious about. So 60 pages to me feels like, oh my God, who's going to read that? Does that?
Right?
And if so, why?
Well, also my question, a lot of it turns out it's just a compilation of like a lot of great stuff that had already been written. But they basically like put it together in this like mega, like a support kit kind of thing. But it was so helpful that if you hadn't read any of the other stuff and you just wanted to like get it all in one place, like, okay, what do we do with it? Right? Like it shouldn't just be on our blog. Let's like maybe share it with other people who should get it, but just aren't part of our owned audience.
That makes sense. I also feel like the name of the game this year and probably for at least a few more years is really do more with less. And that's everything from fewer headcount, less budget, fewer tools. But one thing I think that can be extremely effective on the content side is, great, now you have that 60-page report. How many different components can you turn that into?
Yeah, totally.
That feels like a huge opportunity.
Yeah, actually, ours ended up being the components made up the whole thing. But on other 20-page docs, like, yeah, we can like break it out into a million things and like share it on social. And like, there's a lot that we could be doing with all of it.
Some of the other things that I've been seeing on kind of the AI front, I would say none of these are ready for prime time yet, but there's potential is around using AI to chop up stuff into small clips. So I know
totally
some people are looking at doing this for video, for podcasts, and then spitting them out on different channels to really get the most bang for your buck.
100%. Yeah. Great. I mean, like having someone to do it is like, if AI could do it, even better.
Yeah. Aside from reducing the number of SDRs that are required to do the work, do you think that tooling, like AI tooling, is going to change team construction in any other ways across the go-to-market teams?
The one tooling area that I still think is very poorly, like not fun. I don't know, like there's not a great place to go for this is just the insights to be gleaned from a Salesforce or a Looker or I have to run my own reports or well, I've helped running the reports, but in Looker, because it's still an enigma. I'm like, what fucking variable or dimension is this? Like, I don't know. Like, it's still so crazy to like get access to the data, but also the insights. Like I have like a limited amount of questions I can ask and look at data to see if I'm getting to the right conclusions. Like, why isn't this solved for us already? Like we have all the data. Isn't there like just some button I can say that says like summarize insights from report? I don't know. So the reporting stuff is still so shocking to me that like we have a lot on the sales and marketing tooling, but not a lot on the like data and insight side for sales and marketers to help make better decisions about what we want the tools to do. So I think that's one area that I hope gets disrupted at some point in the future.
This is one of the number one requests for startups that I hear among executives. And I always laugh at this because I used to teach these go-to-market boot camps, and essentially I had a fictitious company that we used as the case study, and it was called Auto CRM. And the idea behind this was we have all of this data coming from all these places, whether it's tools, call transcripts, your email, or whatever. We can aggregate this now, and it should be able to aggregate it, ambiently put it into a CRM, summarize, distill the insights, and then surface them when you need it. And it feels like right now is the time when this can actually be realized. I still haven't seen it yet, though. So to your point,
right? Where is it? Like, I couldn't agree. Like, summarize the stuff for me. I ask a million questions. The Ask Metrics channel at Help Scout is like always probably like, oh my God, not her again. Every single day I have like 5 reports and like 6 questions to be asked in a channel of people who crush it. Like, will get back to me, have all the answers, like always summarized, but also I want to enable myself to not have to ping these guys every single time I like need something. So
and I would argue that the opportunity actually goes one step further, as opposed to you having to ask the questions and get only answers to what you asked. AI should be good enough to proactively notify you on things
100%.
that you should be asking or you should know, and goes well beyond an anomaly. It goes to, it should understand what your KPIs are, and it should be able to go and find all the information relevant.
100%.
I do think we will get there. I think, again, it's early days. I'm highly confident that we are going to get there, though.
But like, who has products for this? You know, like, I don't even know one company that's building, maybe like inside of Tofu, you're building like that as a reporting piece of, you know, what you guys offer. But, but like, yeah, this reporting in general, I feel like is like ripe for a, you know, LLM come to Jesus or whatever.
I mean, our grand vision is that actually we have the ability using AI to put the entire go-to-market, top of funnel go-to-market on autopilot. Because in reality, if you start not only aggregating data across individual customers, but across thousands, and you're running a million of these hyper personalization tests across channels, you'll start to have a really clear picture of what is performing on what channels for what people in what industries at what time.
That's
and
awesome.
Now, once you do that over and over again, you feed this data continuously back into the model, and you can share in a privacy preserving way across customer bases too. So now you can help make everyone smarter, and now pair that with other data sources, whether you're using a sixth sense and getting some kinds of intent data. Pair that with all the stuff you're already doing, and you should have a really clear picture of who you should be going after and why, what types of content you should be generating, what channels you should be using. So that's kind of the vision. And I think there's a lot of other areas that people are taking similar approaches. So we'll get there.
Totally. Please. I hope so. By the way, that sounds really awesome. Putting it all
Have you heard or talked to any of your peers at other companies who have done any type of real experiments with any AI tools and have seen results?
You know, I probably should do more of that. I don't, mostly because I'm still trying to get like the foundation of just, you know, like getting our paid strategy right. So I've like laid off some of the like more sophisticated, like newer things, and like really just stayed true to kind of foundation. But I probably should, because if I could leapfrog it, because we could just do more and better things with AI, like, but nobody's proactively sharing any cool stuff either. I'm like, holy shit, we got to try that. Other than the SDR stuff we're doing, like the mimicking the SDR, I just haven't heard of anything. Have you? Like, what is everybody doing?
For what it's worth, everyone is still in experimentation / evaluation phase. And I think a lot of people who even try to put themselves forward as early adopters, in reality, they haven't done a ton yet.
Yeah.
I think this year, in the next 6 months, it's all very new. We're going to start seeing real case studies and anecdotes and things like that. Like for us, every time we run a campaign with one of our customers, especially when it's something like scaled ABM. So if we take 300 accounts and we do a series of 3 hyper-personalized emails, a landing page, and a white paper or brochure, we run it against a control where we're not doing hyper-personalization. And we want to see what is the uplift on email open rate, click-through rate, time on page, SQL conversion, opportunity conversion, revenue conversion. And so now we're starting to aggregate data where we can actually show, usually it's like 250 to 300% uplift on those metrics. Once, companies start really running more than just experiments, but doing this continuously, I think you're going to start to see some cool stories.
I hope so, because I'm running out of ideas.
One other question on this is, I don't know if this is something that, you know, at your executive level you've talked about, but are there any concerns over anything related to data privacy, security, lawsuits around some of the imagery stuff that's come up?
Only as it relates to the stuff we're building, making sure we're doing that in a way that doesn't like expose any of our customer data. That is a priority topic for us. And you know, we have our head of security and like our chief CTO. There's like a task force around that just to make sure we're well within the limits. But again, the two features we built right now, we know like those are safe. But as we continue to build more features, like I'm sure that they're going to have many a more meeting to make sure like, yeah, they minimize the exposure wherever possible.
That makes sense. And I think that's kind of the tact that most people are taking. One last question on some of the kind of AI stuff and how you guys are thinking about it, both related to go to market and your product, is around whether you're going to let the kind of the masses do bottoms up adoption and experimentation, or whether you prefer to evaluate from a top down perspective and then roll things out to your teams. I've heard equal amounts of both.
Elaine, can you repeat that? Sorry, I was reading when you started the question, I was reading the question in the chat. You're saying like about the approach to planning, or
no, it's more in terms of how you're planning to adopt tools. So I've talked to some CMO CROs who are saying like, hey, I've given my entire team full permission to go and say, for your roles, go find some stuff, test it, and tell me what works. Other people are absolutely the opposite, saying, no, I'm going to evaluate some stuff. I'm going to do strategic planning, and then we're going to roll it out to the team. Do you have a thought on what approach you'll take?
The bottoms up has always been like my way around everything. Mostly like, I'm like, here are your goals. How do you want to get there? Versus the prescription, because giving someone goals and then telling them how to get there always feels very like, I don't know, would create a lot of friction. So definitely bottoms up. So if there's tools or whatever that somebody thinks that they need to use in order to get their job done better, like my growth manager, he's the one that's just like, well, we're going to try to scale the thing it is you asked me to do this way. And I'm like, okay, that sounds great. Like smart. So teams doing it is the better way.
Trust your people. Well,
trust your people.
Pankaj asked a perfect last question. So he asked, what are some leading and lagging metrics that you will use to measure and monitor your success as a CRO?
Revenue is the lagging indicator of whether or not the stuff you put together is working. And so, like I said, my two key metrics are new MRR, new ARR, and net expansion. Those are the two that the leading indicators are all the things that happen before we have to produce that for the month. And that includes things on the sales side, like how many leads have we engaged? At what speed did we engage the lead? What rate are we winning the leads that we received? All help me understand, like, is this going to be a healthy month or a pretty crappy month? On the marketing side, it's very easy because we really use trials as a leading indicator. Our trial period is 15 days. So if we're meeting our trial number, we usually can meet our MRR number. Candidly, we're behind on trials, and that's the thing that's impacting the MRR. So that's why everything I'm doing now is kind of like impacting that. But and any one day I'm tracking probably like 150 metrics as leading indicators. So just like pick one and we're using those. But yeah, those are generally the two buckets of things I'm kind of looking at.
And do you build custom dashboards to track all that yourself?
Not me. I type my little questions and ask metrics. But seriously, before I joined, like the RevOps team at Help Scout is mind blowing. The data team and RevOps, like everything that they have structured, like from an infrastructure perspective, to get access to data and build, it's the best I have ever. Like they are a case study for RevOps teams. So I got very lucky in joining this one because everything's at my fingertips. But first is knowing what you want to instrument, and so figure out what leading indicators matter, and then have someone hopefully help you build how you track it.
Awesome. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for joining. I learned a ton personally. It was really awesome to hear
Same.
also how you guys are running the revenue function at Help Scout. So thank you all for joining, and we will see you next time.
Awesome. Good to
Have a
see
good
you.
rest of your day.
See ya. Bye.